was saying, my name is Rachel Shanshuri. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and I'm here with Harvard Pilgrim today. And it's a pleasure to be back at BC. I really enjoyed the workshop that we ran about a month ago or so on life balance. And for those of you who were able to attend that session, I think you'll find that this is a really good complement to that workshop, that life balance and happiness, is no surprise, go hand in hand, right? So today what I put together for you is a recipe of sorts. And what I've done is I've looked at sort of the key essential ingredients when it comes to happiness. So what are some of the best practices that really help people to live healthy and happy lifestyles? So over the past, let's say 3 decades or so, there's been this huge explosion in research in the field of happiness. People want to know, what makes us happy? What do happy people say is helpful for them? What does it mean to be happy? And how do we sustain happiness? So all of these questions are rising, all of this research has been going on, and what I've done is I've combed through that research and hand-selected for you 7 practices, or what I call ingredients, that I feel are really essential or very helpful for happiness, that'll help you to cultivate a sense of happiness in your lives. So how many people in here like to bake or cook? Oh, a lot. Good, good. So, hang on, my clicker isn't working right here. So that's good news, because this format will be very familiar to you then. So if you're to bake a cake, what are some of the essential ingredients that you might want to have? You can call them. Flour, yes. What else? Eggs. Butter or oil, yes. Sugar. Yeah, I want to have sugar for a cake. Right, all of those things are sort of essential ingredients, right? If you don't have them, there may be some substitutes, but generally speaking, those are the things that we find to be most critical when we're making a cake. So some of the things we're going to be talking about today are really critical. If you don't have them, it's pretty hard to really reach your full potential and be as happy as you could potentially be. Other elements that I'm going to talk about today, other practices, are sort of what I call nice to have. So what might be a nice to have ingredient when you're making cake? Vanilla. Vanilla, yes. Frosting. I'm sorry, I heard another one. Shortcake? Chocolate, yes. Chocolate, my favorite one. Any others? Fancy decorations, right? All these are sort of nice to have. So some of the ingredients I'm going to be talking about today are nice to haves. There are many, many, many ways of achieving happiness, and these are just some that have been shown through the research to be helpful for people, and maybe they'll be helpful for you. So that's a little background on how I chose these 7 elements. I choose different elements for each group that I'm meeting with, and these are ones that are also meant to complement some of the things we talked about in our last workshop on life balance. Does that sound good? Everyone here? Okay. So what does happiness mean? First of all, does anyone not like the word happiness? You can say it's okay. Every once in a while, I have somebody say, oh gosh, I just can't stand that word. And then, I mentioned I've run these workshops on happiness, and they just have this kind of visceral response, like a shudder. Don't say that word. So I come across this periodically. Some people don't really like that word. Can you think of why that might be? Yes.
Not happy?
Because they're not happy. Okay. Okay, that may be the case. Yeah, that might be the case. Any other thoughts on it? Yes.
Well, pressure to think that you are not doing something that you need to do in order to be happy.
Pressure to do something, feel like you need to do something you need to do in order to be happy. Okay, good, yeah. Maybe that's part of the picture. Any other thoughts on it? What kind of associations do people have with the word happiness? Yes.
That is perfect all the time.
That is perfect all the time. I'm so glad you said that. Because I think that's a big part of why some people might have that response. That we get this, I have this kind of goofy emoji smiley face up here on the screen. That happiness is this kind of perfect state that we're trying to reach. That it's about slapping a smile on your face and looking good. And some people feel like it's that it's not sincere, or that it's superficial, or not fully real. And other people feel like that it's just not really attainable. right? So that speaks to, I think, a lot of kind of what's behind some of these negative associations with happiness. So what I want to do today is really expand the way we think about happiness. And obviously everyone in this room feels like this is something that they are working towards, and that's something that's valuable for them. So let's look at happiness in the broadest sense. Like what does it mean to you, and what is the true real meaning of happiness for you? So Martin Seligman is sort of what we consider to be the founder of this branch of positive psychology that looks at happiness and what it really means. And so he says that happiness is not just about feeling good, right? It's not just about having a sense of enjoyment and pleasure, but it's also about these other two things, engagement and meaning. So being engaged in healthy, productive, positive activities and relationships seems to be a really essential component to people's happiness. When you look at people that are truly happy, they're engaged in things that are meaningful and purposeful in their lives. And that they have a sense of meaning and purpose, that they have a sense that what they're doing is worthwhile, that their lives are productive, that they are where they're meant to be, and that their values are aligned with their actions. So all of those paint a broader picture of happiness for us. So it's not just about, this sort of ideal of being perfect or smiling or always being chipper, which can get on people's nerves. It's a broader way of looking at happiness. Sean Aker, who does a lot of work on happiness in the workplace, said this, which I think is important. Happiness is not the belief that we don't need to change. It's the realization that we can, which again goes back to what you're saying, that a lot of people say, when I get that promotion, I'll be happy, or if I find a lifelong partner, I'll be happy, or if my kids stop throwing temper tantrums, I'll be happy, whatever it is. There's always this sort of if this, then I'll be happy. And this just speaks to the fact that the best happiness is achieved even in our messy lives, that we can be content, that we can feel a sense of contentment and purpose and happiness and meaning, even when things aren't perfect, right? And things don't have to be perfect, thankfully, because they never will be, right? So the idea that change and growth is all part of happiness is really important when we're talking about happiness today. So before you guys, each one of you should have a packet. Does everybody have a packet here? Okay. And we're going to be following through this packet throughout the workshop, and we're referring you back to it. There are pens in the middle of the table, so we'll be doing a little bit of writing and contemplating and reflecting on some of these ingredients and sharing them with your partners and with the people at your table. So what I want you to take a moment to do, now that we've talked a little bit about happiness in the broad sense of what it means, I want you to look at happiness in your life and what it means to you. So to create your own personal definition of happiness. So if you look at the first item, the first ingredient, define happiness, you'll see on the bottom it says, for me, happiness is. So if you can just take a minute to come up with your own personal definition of what happiness is for you. And then we'll share some of these. Some thoughts jotted down? Yeah. Does anybody want to share with us what you have? Any brave souls? Yes.
Like feeling connected to others.
Feeling connected to others. Good. That's one of our ingredients. Good. Anyone else? Any takers? Yes, in the back there. Good health. Absolutely. Okay, good. Yes.
Family.
Family. Very important.
Freedom.
Freedom. Very important. Thank you. Yes.
Gratefulness.
Gratefulness. Yes, that is another one of our ingredients we're going to be talking about. Good. Did I see another hand over here? Okay. Good, good. So those are all things that I hear often, that come up again and again when we talk about happiness. So I just want you to be formulating that in your mind, what it means to you and drawing this back to your own lives. So why be happy? There are lots of reasons to be happy. We often, and what we think about is, we know that when we're successful, we tend to be happier, right? Like people that have a lot of success in their lives, good relationships, they do well in their careers, they're generally physically fit and healthy. That tends to make people happier, right? That's pretty obvious. What we don't think about often is that being happy in and of itself makes us more successful in our lives. So that's a difficult relationship to try to tease out. Are people happier because they're successful, or successful because they're happier? And it turns out, through the research, we've seen that actually this is a bidirectional relationship. That being happy breeds success. And it does that in a lot of different ways. So I can give you a few examples. Being happy, being generally happy, is a huge benefit when it comes to our physical health. So we know that being happy is a buffer to some of the effects, the negative effects of stress. So really detrimental effects of stress. If you're generally a happy person, then you're more resilient in that regard. We also know that being happy is actually an immune booster. So when you're more resilient to disease, you're not as likely to contract diseases and viruses if you are generally happier. There's really interesting research on brain power and happiness. People, when you're in a better mood, when you're in a good mood, you think more creatively, you are a better problem solver, you're better at drawing connections, you're better at storing and retrieving information. So generally, just more efficient at thinking and cognitive skills when you're happy. Obviously, happy people attract happy people and are attracted to happy people, so that it impacts your relationships. And people who are generally happier tend to be more successful in their careers. So a lot of the research has dug into this relationship and found some really interesting findings that show us that generally being in a good mood, feeling good about where you are in your lives, being generally happy and content with who you are and where you are makes you more likely to be successful. Okay, so here's the bad news. I have good news and bad news. So the bad news is we're born with this, what we call a negativity bias. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Okay, we're basically more likely to pay attention to the bad things in our lives than the good things in our lives. So if you go to a restaurant, I know this is the bad news. If you go to a restaurant and you have a terrible experience, your waitress is awful, you have to wait 45 minutes for your food, and when it comes to you, it's cold, you walk out that door, and that memory will sit with you. 2 weeks later, you go back to the same restaurant, you have a wonderful experience, your waitress is fabulous, the food is excellent, you don't have to wait long for it, fully satisfied, you walk out that door, and within a few hours, you'll forget about that experience. So you're more likely to hold on to which one of those experiences, the good or the bad one, the negative, right? If you have a negative experience with customer service, that's going to stick with you more than a positive experience. Do you relate to that? Yeah. So this is developed as a sort of through evolution. This is developed as a protective mechanism. So, let's imagine you're a caveman or woman, and you're out hunting for your next dinner, and you don't notice that there is a bear lurking along the side of the woods. What might happen? Yes, you might get eaten, you might die. All right, so let's imagine you're in the same woods and you're walking along a cliff and you don't notice that there's the ledge, the edge of the cliff is 3 feet ahead of you. What might happen? You might fall off. Or if there's a poisonous berry in your basket, okay, you might die. So you don't get second chances with those things. What might happen if you miss an opportunity to befriend someone? You might get another opportunity, right? There's other chances. Or if you miss that sunrise, the beautiful, glorious sunrise with all its colors, you'll probably get another one, right? So oftentimes we'll get chances we'll get other chances to see the positives in life, but we don't always get the chances if we miss something negative. So we have this sort of alarm that goes off all around us. We're all constantly scanning for danger or for threats, right? And that's where it stems from on an evolutionary basis. We are always looking for threats because of our self-preservation nature. We want to stay alive. It's our protection. It's our instinct to protect ourselves. However, that then filters into all the other areas of our lives. So then we become more likely to see the negative attributes in our friends and our coworkers than the positive. We become more apt to complaining about the bad things in our days than about appreciating and feeling grateful for the good things in our lives. So this is a pattern that we see that's pretty pervasive in people. But the good news is that we can train our brains to undo that, to undo this negativity bias so that we are now thinking more in terms of focusing on what's positive, what's good in our lives, what makes us feel good, what we're grateful for, what we're happy about. But it takes training, it takes practice. Practice, 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 just like anything. So how do you learn how to ride a bike? Practice. How do you learn how to, back to baking a cake, how do you learn how to bake a cake? Practice, right? First time you might burn it, second time might be passable, third time might actually be good. So practice, and happiness, I say more than anything, happiness is a skill. So yes, it's an emotion, it's a state of being, but it's also, first and foremost, really something that you can learn. It's a skill that we practice. And we practice by thinking and acting in ways that will make us happy. And the more we train our brain to do that, the more we become hardwired to act as if happiness is our default. So, our second ingredient here has to do with training your brain to think in a positive way. What I want you to do for just 1 minute is put down, if you can for a second, put down your lunch, put down your pen, sit comfortably in your chair, and just think about one of the happiest moments in your life. Okay? It might be something really huge, momentous, or it might be something small, but something that a moment that you really remember that stands out to you as something that is a time when you were really, truly happy. Remember your definition of happiness. Then think about that moment of true happiness. And I want you to play it out in your mind. Remember who was there, what you were doing, what it felt like. Try to recreate that moment in all 5 of your senses. And close your eyes and just do that for about 30 seconds. Try to put yourself back there. Okay? And you can open your eyes and just, what I want you to do is turn to a partner at your table, or if there's an uneven number, you can do 2 or 3. And I want you to share with them what you thought about, what your happiest moment was. Go. Take turns, make sure each of you gets a moment. right, how did that feel for you guys? How was it talking about your happy, thinking about your happy moments and talking about them? It was nice? Yep. Okay. Enjoyable? Yeah, a little bit of a mood boost? Yeah, were you able to bring yourself back into that moment so you you felt some of the things that you actually felt when you were in that situation? Yeah, good. So this speaks to the power of our ability to choose what we want to focus on, to choose our thoughts carefully. And sometimes, especially when you're in stressful situations, it feels like your thoughts are choosing you, right? Do your thoughts ever race through your mind? If you're locked out of your house, your thoughts just take over and you start blaming someone for taking your keys, or your car breaks down, your mind automatically goes to all the things you're not going to get done that day. So it feels like you're sort of the servant to your thoughts. And what we forget is that we actually have a huge ability to choose what we want to focus on, to choose how we want to think about the situations in our life and the people in our life and about ourselves. So this exercise is a reminder of that. It's a simple exercise. It's fairly easy because you're not in a particularly stressful situation right now. But that even just you taking a moment to think about something that feels good to you, it's within your reach and it affects how you feel. So that's the second part of it, is that what we think directly impacts how we feel. What you choose to focus on, what you choose to think about, is either going to make you happier or less happy. And this is one of those kind of essential ingredients. When I talk about some are essential, some are nice to have, having this power and this ability to really focus your thoughts carefully, to say, I'm going to choose to focus on this part of the situation right now, is really essential to being happy, to being able to monitor your thoughts and select which ones are best for you, as opposed to just being controlled and overrun by your thoughts. Does that make sense to people? Do you have any thoughts on that? Yes?
How do you keep from being eaten by a bear?
How do you keep from getting eaten by a bear?
Yeah, because there are things that you have to focus on that are not happy, and if you don't focus on them, ultimately they're going to harm you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm going to take that to a larger meaning. Like you're saying, how do you keep from getting eaten by a bear? That also means, like, how do you stop yourself from getting hurt, and how do you stop yourself from getting into bad situations or dangerous situations in general, right? So there, I think the thing is that we're so hardwired to be aware of when other people are potentially threatening or dangerous to us, that it's sort of instinctual to us, that it comes as second nature to many people. Some people, it doesn't as much. But I think first thing to keep in mind is that we're kind of already, made in that way anyhow. We're kind of already made to be alert and aware of dangers or threats, in general. And then the second thing is, I think that we tend to perceive a lot more things because we focus on the negative so much more than the positive in general. And again, we can train ourselves not to. But we get this skewed picture of the world, right? That people have worse intentions than they do, or that situations are generally worse and more harmful and more destructive than they actually are. And so I think the idea is, yes, the dangers are there are a lot of negative situations that, we get into all sorts of situations at work, with friends, with family, that are very difficult and hard. But I think that you try to maintain if you kind of maintain your positive outlook, or trying to get the benefits, or trying to grow or learn or change in those situations, that you will find, it's not necessary to always focus on those dangers or those threats. There's always a choice, what we want to focus on. And there's always positive things to focus on or negative things to focus on. So I'm not sure if I really answered your question, but I think that in general, just maybe the best answer to that is just that we tend to overemphasize the negative and the dangers and the threats. So I think we need to worry more about, well, let's see, how do I notice the positive things that are going on in my life right now? How do I focus and pay attention to positive things about the people that are around me in my lives, or my blessings, or the things that I need to be grateful for? That kind of, is what you're saying? Yeah.
I think it's less about danger Like, I think we'll still be prone to notice, like, dangerous things, but more just, like, the focusing on the good parts of things rather than the bad.
Yeah.
Like, the danger, I think, is still, like, inherent in us as humans to notice that.
Yes. Yes, very well put. Okay, thank you. So, someone mentioned gratitude, and we were just talking about it, but somebody over here mentioned gratitude. And this is one of those ingredients that some people say it's essential, some people say it's a nice to have, maybe it's in between. We feel like most people, the research shows us that most people that are the happiest will state that gratitude is something that is very important to them, that they're grateful. The happiest people are the most grateful people. So I'd like to look at some exercises that can help us to cultivate this sense of gratitude, of being thankful for and grateful for the people, the places, the situations that have brought us to where we are in our lives. So here are some techniques that people use. Saying grace before meals. Keeping a gratitude log, which I've given you an example of in your package here. It's on it's at the top of page 2. And when you keep a gratitude log, the idea is that at the end of the day, or maybe 3 times a week, you sit down and you write 3 things that you're grateful for. But there's a twist to it. If you can also think of a challenging or difficult situation that you're in, and you can think about how you can be grateful even for that challenge or difficult situation you're in, then you'll be even better off. So the happiest people are not only grateful for the things that are going well in their lives, but they're also grateful for the setbacks and the challenges that they've had in their lives, because they know those have made them stronger, healthier, happier people in the long run. So that's the challenge, is not only thinking about the things that are going well, but also thinking about what's not going so well, and what about that is really positive for me? What about that is something that's going to help me to become a stronger, better person? What else do we have? A gratitude ball toss, which I'm going to do with you just a minute. That's why you have those sparkly balls in the middle of your tables. A gratitude letter or visit. This is something that's also been researched in many studies. What this means is you think of somebody that you're really grateful for in your lives, and you take a moment or several moments to write a letter to them to thank them for what they mean to you, what they've done to you in your life, what they've done for you in your lives. And then you present that to them. You read it to them, you bring it to them, you show it to them, and you share with them. And that, just that single act seems to have a huge impact on how people feel about themselves. So not only is it a gift you give to somebody else, but it's something that is very much connected to happiness, and that makes people feel better about who they are and happier about who they are. All right, what else? Gratitude bulletin board. So this is an idea where you have a bulletin board in your house, and you and your family members will post things on there that you're grateful for. Maybe it's pictures, maybe it's just a quick note about something that happened that day, or reminders and mementos of things that they're grateful for. And then there's the 3 times at bed exercise, which is basically an exercise that where, at the end of the day, you might lie down in your bed or with your children or your family and talk about 3 things that you're grateful for that day. And then there's a gratitude tree or a jar, which is a similar idea. It's basically you keep a jar or a tree. You make a tree, and you can cut leaves, and people can write down what they're grateful for on those leaves and then hang them on the tree. So that's called a gratitude tree. There are all sorts of people make gratitude turkeys and all sorts of other gratitude things, just to keep us mindful and remembering the things that are important to us in our lives. All right, who wants to do a ball toss? Any takers? Okay. All right, we're ready up here. All right, someone grab the ball. And what I want, this exercise is aimed at helping you to become more fluid in thinking in a grateful way. So it's trying to help you to just be more fluid in thinking in a grateful way, being more mindful of the things that we're grateful for, and having it come to us sort of as second nature. So initially, this is hard to do, but hopefully the more you practice it, the easier it gets. So what I want you to do is just one person takes the ball and they say something they're grateful for, and they throw it to the next person. Okay? That person says something they're grateful for, but it can't be the same thing, and they throw it to the next person, and so on and so forth. So we can't repeat things. Okay? Each person has to think of something that they're thankful for. Someone says my family, oh, my family's out for camp, we have to make something else. And try to do it as quickly as possible.
All right, I'm afraid to
to think of them quickly, and that's why I said just really try to not think about it too much. Just try to think of the first thing that comes to your mind, something that makes you happy, something that that was a positive experience or a person in your life. And the idea is really again that you just get into this fluid mode of just thinking of things that you're grateful for instead of things to complain about. Because again, we have this tendency to complain rather than to give thanks. So again, that's trying to retrain our brain out of that negativity bias. So you can do it on your own too. You can take your ball and you can throw it against the wall, or you can throw it up in the air. And just kind of train your brain, thinking about all the things that you're grateful for. You can teach it to your children, you can play the game with your family. Just another way that you can help ingrain that mentality. All right, moving on to our next ingredient. It's called taking in the good. Has anybody heard of this? Okay. This is an exercise that sort of takes gratitude to the next level. It's not just being grateful for the good things or the positive experiences or the wonderful people in our lives. It is about really holding on to positive memories and making them part of who we are so that it actually changes us in a positive way. I think we just let positive experiences flow by so often that we, so many good things in our lives that we don't really pay attention to. So many maybe little favors somebody does for you, so many little pieces of beauty in our lives that we don't notice because we're too busy rushing around doing this and that. This is an exercise that helps us to slow down and take in and remember the good things in our lives. So it's called taking in the good. My grandmother lived till about 95 years old, and she lived in England. So growing up, I was always far away from her, and we'd visit her about once a year. She'd come here, or we'd go over there and visit her. And this is an exercise that she practiced. Now, I doubt that you have read her Kanson's book on hardwiring happiness, but she probably could have written it because she knew very well how to take in the good. And what she used to do with me was she would, because we went long stretches without seeing each other, right before I left, she would take my face in her hands. And she would get very close up to me. She'd hold my head in her hands, and she would just stare at me kind of really intently for like a minute, which felt like an eternity. And I never really knew what she was doing, but you know, I wasn't really going to say anything. She's, you know, my grandmother. So I would just let it go. And then finally, when I was about 19 years old, I was leaving, and I said to her something like, "Grandma, what are you doing? What is this about?" And she said, "I'm taking a picture." So that's what she was doing. She was taking a mental picture. She was absorbing it so that she could retrieve that whenever she wanted throughout the year. So it's like she had this photo album, and she could just pick out this picture here, this picture there, to look at, to remember, to recall whenever she wanted. So she knew this instinctually. So this is a practice that maybe some of you are doing. Very easy to integrate into your lives. But it's a 3-step process. So Rick Hanson makes it easy for us. So this is what we have to do. We have to, first of all, have a positive experience, okay? So when something good happens to you. Maybe it's somebody you met here at this workshop today. Maybe it's the delicious food that you're eating. Maybe it's the beautiful weather that we're having today. Or maybe it's something that you do intentionally to try to get yourself in a good mood, like listen to a good song or try a relaxation exercise. But whatever it is, you have a good experience, okay? I think you'll find you have more and more of them once you start paying attention to them a lot. The second thing is you try to enrich that experience. So you try to enrich it as much as you possibly can. So let's say your good experience is a snuggle with one of your children at the end of the day, okay? And that's something that maybe happens every night, but you know, it just comes and goes, you don't pay attention to it. But this night you're going to enhance that. And you're going to just really feel what it feels like in that moment. You're going to feel it in all of your senses. You're going to absorb it. You're going to notice anything new about that experience and be curious about it. And just sit with it, okay? And the absorbing part, the third part is, you're going to sit with it and try to extend that for at least like 10, 15 seconds longer than you normally would, okay? So that it really becomes, it really sets in, okay? So it sets in and becomes part of who you are, something that you can remember, that you can store, and that you can retrieve, and that has an impact on you. Okay, so it's 3 steps. Everybody got them? Have a positive experience, enrich it, and absorb it. So those that have those 3 steps outlined for you on reading number 4. If you can just take a moment with the people at your table to talk about when you might be able to use this exercise. So what types of experiences can you see yourself using this in? Does that make sense? Yeah? When might you be able to use this? Okay, so take like 30 seconds just to talk about, give some examples of how you can use this exercise. Go ahead. So ingredient number 4, yes. table have some ideas you can share about when you can use this? Yeah? Okay. Moving right along. So these are some of the most common positive emotions people have. A woman by the name of Barbara Fredrickson's done this research, and she looked at happy people, people who report that they're happy, and what kinds of things do they feel. So these are some of the top 10 that we see. Joy, gratitude, serenity, interest, hope, pride, amusement, inspiration, awe, and love. So those feelings all are pretty significant for our happiness. So I want you to take a moment and think about which ones of these do you experience a lot in your life. Just look at them. Which ones of these do you have a lot of in your life right now? Question just for yourself. And which ones might you need to work on? Is there one in particular that you're like, oh gosh, I'm completely missing that in my life right now? Just a thought for you to think about. So on your sheet, on page 2, I have an exercise for you to do. For the interest of time, I'm just going to have you do only part of it, which is check off which ones of these positive emotions that you want to work on in your life. Okay, so just put a check next to each of the positive emotions that you may not be experiencing enough of right now in your life that you'd like to enhance. And then, on your own time, you can think about setting goals. Setting goals to increase those emotions in your life. So there's a space underneath it later on, and you can think about, what can I do this week to help me feel more of this? What can I do today to help me feel more of this? So just check the ones that you might want to be working on for yourself. So setting the goal is really the key piece to that. Setting goals to work on those areas of your life. So if you're thinking, I'm really missing some love in my life right now, then maybe it's you're setting a goal to schedule a date night with your significant other twice a month. Think about one thing that's realistic that you can work on that'll help you increase those emotions. And if you work on that and you set your goals and you actually follow through with them, your happiness will increase. Direct relationship. Okay, we're down to the last 2. This one is just a quick one. It has to do with knowing what you're really good at, knowing where you shine, what are your strengths and what are your assets, and how you can use those in your life. So a lot of people, they may know what they're good at, but they don't actually make the effort to share those skills and talents with the people around them. And when we do that, our happiness soars. When we take what we're good at and we practice it on a daily basis, whether you're a person that's really compassionate and a great listener and you use that in your lives, or whether it's a skill that you have like baking or fixing cars and you use that in your lives, when you take what you're really good at and you share it with other people, your happiness soars. So especially if you find in your work, you work 40 hours a week generally, typically, it's really important that you're bringing your special attributes and skills and talents to the table in your workplace, in your homes, with your families, in your communities. Know what you're good at and really work to enhance that in your lives. So some people say, don't even bother working on your weaknesses, that's too hard. Just know what you're good at and do more of it. So I don't know if I'm a proponent of that theory, but definitely know what you're good at and do more of it. And our last ingredient that we have that we're going to talk about today is relationships. So a few people mentioned family, relationships, being connected to other people, and this is really an essential component of happiness. This is a part of happiness that we see over and over and over again. People that are the happiest have the most meaningful connections to other people. People that are most unhappy are least connected in a meaningful way to other people. So if you're gonna make one investment when you walk out this door, let it be an investment in your relationships, in nurturing and enhancing the quality of your relationships, particularly with the people that you see the most in your lives. Your coworkers, your family, your friends, your neighbors, and you'll find that that will have one of the most significant, the biggest impacts on your happiness out of all of these ingredients. So there was this long, big study done on men that entered Harvard, Harvard's, let's see, I think the school was class of like, I think they entered Harvard in 1938, that's what it was. And these men, they tracked their lives for like 75 years, and they looked at who was happy and who was unhappy, and why were these people happy and why are these people unhappy. And what they found was, the researcher who did this is one of the most famous longitudinal studies of all time in psychology. He summed up his results with this. He said, happiness is love, full stop. So what made people happy more than anything else that he found in this study was love. Meaningful, loving, caring connections and relationships with other people. The other thing is, we become like the people we hang around with and spend time with. So very carefully choose who you want to spend time with. Again, like you're choosing your thoughts, you're choosing who you want to be around as much as possible. That can be hard when you have to work closely with someone or when you're in a family with someone who's very negative. But be aware that there's this idea of social contagion. When we're around people that are negative, it filters into our own mindset and we become more negative. It's just the way that we are. When you're around that toxic person that's always complaining, that filters into your mindset. You become more negative. And the opposite is true too. People who are really positive have that impact of making you happier. People who see the best, people who are optimistic are going to bring you up and lift your spirits. So just be mindful of that and choose who you want to spend time with. So to sum it up, just our 7 ingredients we have here today. Remembering your personal definition of happiness, committing it to memory if you can. Choosing your thoughts carefully as opposed to just letting them race through your head. Choosing what you want to focus on in your lives. Practicing gratitude, so being grateful for the things, the people, the places, situations that have brought you to where you are now. Taking in the good, we talked about, really absorbing those situations in our lives that make us happy. Trying to work on increasing those positive emotions in your lives. Using your strengths and assets every single day. And then finally nurturing your relationships. And all of those are keys to happiness. If you use them actively every day, I think that you're bound to increase your happiness. So thank you. That's the end of my presentation today. If you